This story is based on alleged accounts without concrete evidence and may be viewed as science fiction. It is presented for entertainment and discussion purposes only, and we do not endorse or support any claims made. Viewers should conduct their own research and form their own opinions. In the previous episode, we discussed how the Colonel was taken aback by a sudden noise from outside. He quickly grabbed a gun from behind his chair, which startled the author as well. In this episode, we will continue their conversation from this point. Do you know any other whistleblowers about Dulce besides yourself? Yes, I know two guys who to some extent had access to the secrets of Dulce. Paul Benowitz and Phil Schneider, but they are both dead. Let me talk about Phil Schneider first. Philip Schneider was an American geologist and engineer who gained notoriety in the 1990s for his claims of working on highly classified government projects, particularly the construction of underground military facilities and tunnels, such as Dulce Base. He alleged to have personally witnessed a conflict between U.S. military personnel and extraterrestrial beings, which he referred to as the Dulce War. I have seen his speeches, and most of his content about Dulce is fabricated. But I have seen his name, so I know he is a real eyewitness. I don't know why he lied or exaggerated, maybe to confuse the guys at DSD-3. Or was he deceived by some people? I don't know where Phil got his false information from, but he did indeed stay at Dulce. And Benowitz was a real genius who never actually entered the Dulce facility. All his information was self-discovered. But precisely because he was too close to the truth, he was targeted and eliminated by the guys at DSD-3. His death was basically caused by human intervention. Let's talk about Benowitz. Sure. As early as 1979, he visited Dulce with some radio equipment, trying to intercept signals in the area. His actions caused dissatisfaction among the lower-level Greys. And it can be said that the tense situation at the end of 1979 may have had something to do with him. Later, he intensified his efforts and built a station in the area, where he would film flying objects near the facility or conduct radio monitoring. At the time, DSD-3 was not aware of his actions, but he voluntarily reported the strange situations he observed to the Kirtland Security Police and the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, AFOSI, organizations that were actually closely connected to DSD-3. AFOSI quietly received the data and photos collected by Benowitz and passed them on to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. They found that the data matched the actual situation very well, which alarmed the Sandia National Laboratories and Air Force officers to analyze the videos and photos he had taken. At that time, there was also a famous story about a local woman who found Benowitz and claimed that she and her 6-year-old son had witnessed a UFO in New Mexico. Afterwards, they fell into a coma and woke up 4 hours later with hazy memories, as if they had been abducted. Benowitz then took the woman for hypnotherapy, during which the doctor restored her memories. She was taken to a facility where many cows were being slaughtered, and there were many bottles and jars filled with various organs and body parts. She also said that a special object had been implanted in her skin, which could be used to monitor her behavior in real time. After that, she and her son were sent back to the spacecraft and thrown into the desert. I have not verified this incident, so I can only say that it is possible. But Benowitz believed it without question and connected this abduction story with UFOs, cattle mutilations, aliens, and nearby military bases to form a basic storyline that he spread. He keenly observed the connection between military activities in the area and extraterrestrials. Looking at the map, the southern Holloman Air Force Base and White Sands, the eastern Kirtland Air Force Base, and finally the northwestern desert high terrain of Farmington, Aztec, and Dulce are surrounded. These three areas make up Roswell, Socorro, San Antonio, Los Alamos, and other places closely related to urban legends such as UFO crashes and alien abductions. The low-frequency electromagnetic wave receiver that Benowitz built could intercept nearby transmission signals. FOC and DSD-3 wanted to stop him from further investigation and seize his equipment. FOC refused to investigate further into the data collected by Benowitz, citing confidentiality. Unable to make progress, Benowitz sent his report to the Arkansas state legislature and wrote letters to several U.S. senators, including John Lear, who was known as a famous UFO investigator. Arkansas sent a man named Bill Moore to meet with Benowitz, who told him about the evidence he had found and his speculation that at least two groups of extraterrestrials were active in underground facilities beneath the mesa. He thought this activity was related to agreements signed with the U.S. government. Benowitz's speculation was accurate, but Bill Moore was actually a spy sent by FOC. His mission was to spread false information and disrupt Benowitz's investigation, making him think he was on the wrong track. DSD-3's mission was to threaten him, anonymously demanding that he stop probing U.S. national secrets, or he would lose his company. This threat was effective because his radio company was his life's work, and he did not want to lose it. What is Bill Moore's story? In 1989, Bill Moore publicly announced at the Mutual UFO Network Conference in Las Vegas that he was a member of FOC and had provided Benowitz with a lot of false information and misleading directions. This confession shocked the entire UFO research community, and everyone began to suspect whether their colleagues were government-planted spies. Benowitz himself was devastated, as he had already given up on his investigation. And the revelation of Moore's role as a spy made him mentally unstable. He suffered from paranoia, depression, and other mental illnesses that kept him awake at night and eventually took a toll on his health until he passed away in 2003. Most of the stories you see on the internet about Dulce actually originate from Benowitz's storyline, which combined aliens, underground bases, and abductions. He was a skilled investigator. Okay, I understand Benowitz's story, but what about Phil Schneider? Benowitz discovered some of the truth through his own investigations. While Phil Schneider was undoubtedly an employee who worked there at the time, when he began speaking in 1995, I immediately took notice of him. I didn't remember if his name was on Dulce's list, but I could hear details that only someone involved would know. I didn't immediately contact him because I knew DSD-3 must have been aware of him. If they could confirm that Phil was one of them and was leaking information so publicly, his life would be on the line. It's well known that his lectures continued for a year. during which he revealed many secrets about Dulce, and then he died. But strangely, he was mostly making things up about the conflict events in 1979. Why did I believe he was genuine? Because when I arrived at the facility to execute my mission, our team received a complete list. Before 1979, the number of ordinary staff members at Dulce facility had remained at around 1,500, with over 100 DSD-3 soldiers and over 70 command members. However, in the second half of 1979, due to the friction with the lower-level Greys, the command evacuated most of the staff, leaving only 200 or so to maintain the normal operation of the facility. This decision prevented greater casualties in the subsequent conflict. The reason I fully believed Phil Schneider was because his name was on that complete list, and I had checked this fact. When we conducted the mental evaluations of survivors, we verified the status of each person before they were allowed to leave. 120 people accepted our investigation, 72 were marked as deceased, and the remaining 23 were marked as missing and possibly captured by the lower-level Greys during the battle. Phil's name was among those 23 people. The military believed they were captured because they thoroughly searched levels 1 to 3 of the facility and found no trace of those 23 people. They could only assume they were taken away by the lower-level Greys. The 120 survivors were transported back to Lanel via magnetic levitation, while the 72 bodies could not be taken away through the tunnel because it was too conspicuous and would be a major leak if any ordinary employees at Lanel saw it. So these bodies were airlifted to Kirtland Air Force Base. What was more surprising was that the Jicarilla Apache Tribal Police Department and the New Mexico State Police were also notified, because 2 officers from each of these agencies were present at the exit at the time. I suspect they signed some kind of confidentiality agreement with DSD-3, and their job was to make sure they were not disturbed by other local agencies during transportation. Also, later I found out that DSD-3 never restricted local Native Americans or farmers who would sometimes come to the entrance of the base out of curiosity and discover ventilation shafts, entrances, or covered runways. Some even witnessed the moment the gate was opened. Of course, these locals never leaked any secrets to the media, and I don't know how DSD-3 controlled them. Colonel, could you explain the tense situation in 1979 and the reasons behind it? As I mentioned before, we established a relationship through some diplomatic means, allowing them to capture animals for genetic research, while providing us with technological support. During our ongoing communication, the lower-level Greys told us about their ancient worship. This worship regarded the lower-level area as their holy land, and prohibited humans from entering the area below the 4th level. The conflict in 1979 occurred because we entered the 4th level, and they immediately launched an attack. Two years after the conflict, we followed the DMZ principle and established a more comprehensive non-military zone. We then slowly restored our relationship with the lower-level Greys with the help of dissenters. Why did the military enter the 4th level and break their taboo? Because they discovered the truth. The reason the lower-level Greys did not want humans to Enter the fourth level was not due to a religious taboo, but a lie. They simply did not want humans to know what they were doing there. For a long time, the lower-level Greys had been abducting U.S. residents for their genetic modification experiments. They had many physiological defects, including the inability to metabolize in arid environments, the need for a humid environment to survive, skin that could not withstand direct sunlight, as I mentioned before, and poor vision under high illumination, so they always used low-intensity lighting. They also longed for the invisibility ability like the Bendies, provided that they would not be burned by the sun. The genetic defects of the Greys are congenital, and the ancestors never intended them to reproduce extensively. They could only maintain their population through genetic engineering. So the total population has always remained at less than 10,000. They knew they could not compete with surface humans. So they had to hide and find ways to obtain high-quality human genes. However, according to the agreement signed in the 1950s, kidnapping humans for research was a violation of the agreement. Therefore, they have been trying to deceive us and prevent humans from entering the area below the fourth level. In 1979, a lower-level Grey defected to the upper level and told DSD-3 that there had been a large number of illegal abductions in the lower levels. These rumors have persisted for many years, but have never been confirmed. In fact, since the 1950s, the lower-level Greys' flying saucers have started to appear frequently. But DSD-3 has not received any notification. This is because the military has always believed that the radar deterrent in the late 1940s was effective in preventing the Greys from flying without informing the military. However, at that time, DSD-3 was too small, with only around 40 people. And the lower-level Greys did not think they needed to worry about the power of humans. They tried to abduct as many humans as possible during this opportunity. The lower-level Greys view humans as a source of food and, like the dissenters, extract protein from their organs. However, they are not willing to eat rats or other animals, because they believe that eating humans is a tradition that has been passed down for thousands of years. They believe that the ancestors placed them there to eat humans, and it is an ancient doctrine. If they were to eat rats, it would be a betrayal of the ancestors. What's even more ridiculous is that according to records, the ancestors arranged genetic defects for the creation of the Anunnaki and the Greys, but they did not care about this and instead tried to modify their original genes. The dissenters opposed this worship and wanted to cooperate with humans, so they ate rats, which of course satisfied their survival needs. In the late 1950s, the lower-level Greys' abduction activities became more and more rampant, even threatening the safety of the U.S. military. In 1956, a sergeant at the White Sands Missile Range was abducted by a flying saucer, then dismembered and thrown into the wild. His genitals, eyeballs, and rectum were all removed with surgical precision, which is typically the work of Greys. DSD-3 spent a month expanding its team to 70 people and making full preparations for combat before launching a direct attack on the fourth level and engaging in battle with the lower-level Greys. Stay tuned for the next episode where we will resume our discussion on Dulce files.